Hi everyone, sorry for the very abrupt ending on the last video, but as stated previously, there are a number of services that can be utilized. So Child Protective Services has a lot of services that they can put in place after the investigation is done, whether the neglect allegations were true or not. Parents have the option to sign on for voluntary services, and the Child Protective Services social worker is able to sit there and put in a number of different services. So like they have in-home services, which could be like in-home therapy, ABA, mentors are under this list as well. There's also like a bunch of different parental support programs that they can put in. So I have listed some of those later on. There's substance abuse programs for parents that are suffering from substance abuse. They can sit there and utilize like methadone clinics and ones like that to sit there and try to help accelerate the parents' ability to become sober. And then a number of community programs can also be accessed, like the YMCA Boys and Girls Club, to just sit there and also try to get the child support outside of the home and within the community. On the micro level, if I as an individual was in with families suffering from neglect allegations and like kids within that, individual therapy is something that would be done just to sit there and like utilize and like meet with the client themselves about like what's going on, helping them process like what's happening. And honestly, there's a lot to like digest from there based on a client-to-client basis. Safety assessments can also be done just based on whether the client is safe in the home, whether it's necessary to contact Child Protective Services and file and see whether home removal is a better option, which obviously wouldn't be my position. It would be up to the Child Protective Service workers. And then even like the utilization of early intervention with some kids would be extremely beneficial. On a meso level, in-home services for the child. So as mentioned previously, some of the children in these scenarios exhibit behavioral and attention issues. And so it's one of those where you can sit there and bring in services to sit there and work with the child in the home to sit there and kind of address those issues. Also sit there and talk about like coping skills, things like that. So while these services are also for the child, the parents can also utilize some of these services and it can be really beneficial for them as well. So some examples were the Triple P program and collaborative problem solving. And then an example of a substance abuse program that could be beneficial is Project Connect. I'll go over all of those very shortly. And then on the macro level, it's one of those where availability of services really does need more work. It's one of those where a lot of times when me personally, when I'm working with individuals in this field, the wait list for a lot of the services are incredibly long. It's like even now, like trying to connect people with individual therapy, even though it's virtual, a lot of places are like a 9-month wait list. So 9 months to them is an extremely long time. So I think availability of services, also sitting there and being able to connect them with people who don't have like health insurance, who don't have like the ability to access a lot of these resources. So making sure that they're available to not only just like middle class populations and above, like making sure that people who are struggling with poverty are able to sit there and utilize these services that are available to a lot of other people. Awareness of programs is also something that needs to be addressed because a lot of times there are programs, people just don't know about them. So sitting there and having people be aware of what's out there. So having like a long list of like things, like programs that are in an area that parents can utilize, making sure that other places such as like schools have access to them, social workers, doctors' offices, just that these places and these services are widely known. Better funding for programs also, needs to be addressed. So it's one of those where a lot of the human service programs are underfunded, which results in low employment, low retention rates, which then results in longer wait lists. So by better funding programs, you're able to sit there and pay for more employees to be there. You're also sitting there and you can sit there and put more money towards working with the clients and like putting that investment in so that when people are getting these services, they might not need as many services later on. Another thing is better research. So when conducting this whole presentation, a lot of the research is based on child maltreatment, which includes child abuse and neglect, but not many research studies have actually studied neglect as its own like entity. It's one of those where it's often looped in with abuse, so there aren't very clear numbers on it. There's not very clear like literature that separates the two. Triple P is one of the programs that I talked about before. It is used for children with behavioral and emotional difficulties. It is ages 0 to 12, but they do have a teen program for 12 to 18. And then there are adjustments made for kids with any type of disabilities. So it's more sitting there figuring out where they land, like cognitively, age-wise, and then just kind of using those approaches. It's offered in multiple formats, so it can be taught individually, in a group. Parents can learn it at their own pace. It aims to address the behaviors of the child while teaching the parent how to monitor and address them in a safe way. So it incorporates different ideas such as how to safely use timeout. It uses a strength-based, non-judgmental approach, so you're not chastising parents for the way that they currently discipline, but it's one of those where you're sitting there kind of like acknowledging their strengths at the same time, and then it aims to decrease behaviors while increasing the parent's confidence while teaching positive parenting techniques and reducing stress. Collaborative problem solving works with youth families displaying internalized and externalized behaviors. It's ages 3 to 21 and is trauma informed, which is great, especially with working with kids with this kind of trauma history. It teaches skills that can be utilized, such as stress tolerance, problem solving, and flexibility. So it's about teaching kids how to sit there and develop these skills. And it really does work to build those relationships within the kids' lives. So working with the school, the family, it's helping to reduce that family stress while building on those relationships. And its goal is to sit there and reduce the use of restrictive interventions, such as using restraints. And then Project Connect works with families to get involved in the child welfare. It works with families who are involved in the child welfare system and with parents exhibiting substance abuse. It is ages 0 to 17 and aims to keep the kids in the home or reunify kids that were taken out of the home due to the substance abuse. They offer a number of different services like in-home therapy, substance abuse monitoring for the parents, nursing to sit there and kind of address like any concerns they have in that area. They have parenting groups, support groups, individual therapy. It seems like a really great program for people who are struggling with substance abuse and are involved with child welfare. And I think it's one of those where neglect, it's widely known, but not in the context that it needs to be. And so while it's such a huge issue and it's one of the most common forms of neglect, it's the most common form of child maltreatment is neglect. It's actually underreported. So sexual abuse is actually the most reported form of child maltreatment. And so it's one of those where it's important for people to have more awareness of what neglect is, what it constitutes, and just kind of seeing what like those signs are and see if they're able to pick up on it more so that it can be reported and addressed, especially if it's early on rather than years down the road, like a lot of cases are. It's one of those where families really do require a lot more support, and this field needs more support and services for children and parents regarding education, sitting there and making sure that services are available to these families so they can sit there and start that work right away rather than having to wait months for it. There are a lot of different areas that need to be addressed that just haven't been addressed yet. And so I think it's one of those where we just need to take this one step at a time and just see how far we can go. And there are my references, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.